Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Ctesisol Group, based on the relevant webinar realized by the American Institute of Architects of San Francisco on the new IES&A approved daylight metrics. The subject of today's webinar is natural lighting in the built environment. Natural daylighting in the built environment. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Ctesisol Group, based on the relevant webinar realized by the American Institute of Architects of San Francisco on the new IES&A approved daylight metrics. The subject of today's webinar is natural daylight in the built environment. Some logistics to begin with. You can send us your questions through the GoToWebinar control pane that appears on the top right-hand corner of your screen that will be taken at the end of the presentation. This means that you can send us your questions the moment they arise, and we will tend to them as time permits at the end. We will have the audio on mute, so we can only take questions through the GoToWebinar interactive panel. At the end of the webinar, we will give you the link where you can download the full presentation, and as soon as the recording has been uploaded, you will receive an email with that link too. My name is Konstantina Kilaiditi. I am an architectural engineer and a London Metropolitan University graduate. I have worked as an architect in London and the north of Spain since the year 2000, and I am a member of the Technical Chamber of Greece since 2006. I have collaborated with Ctesisol Group since 2010 as a technical and lighting advisor, and I recently joined with the natural lighting applications team for Eastern Europe. An important point that has to be made is that the daylighting studies were conducted in the state of California, where factors like daylighting and optical comfort are taken into serious consideration when we are asked to judge whether the design and planning of a building has been successful or not. In contemporary Greek reality, we cannot claim something remotely similar applies. The most common approach here is the utilization of the electrical lighting system throughout the day, regardless of the quantity of natural daylight available. Still, we believe that surely, little by little, and day by day, by making small changes in the way we think and act on a personal level, we will bring about a change on a wider scale. Today's web presentation is comprised by three main sections. Firstly, and most importantly, we will analyze the vital role that daylight plays in our lives, the rich and complex nature of circadian rhythms, and how we still live in the Middle Ages of optical comfort within the buildings we occupy. The insufficient penetration of natural light in our buildings, the reasons behind this, and tools that were developed in order to overcome these obstacles will also be mentioned. We will then describe ways in which we can efficiently bring natural daylight into the interior of our buildings, from the initial design stages, but also in existing buildings. It is important to point out that in times of crisis, as we have been experiencing in the past few years, few new building projects are being realized. The focus, therefore, turns on the performance optimization of existing buildings and the minimization of energy consumption. Concluding, we will talk about the ways in which Ctesisol Group can contribute drastically with interventions of high economical and technological value and offer solutions well adapted to the contemporary needs and aims of the market in the form of energy efficiency contracts, a new contract model in the spirit of corporate cooperation. But let us start from the beginning, returning to the basics. We are essentially daytime animals. As such, we evolved through the millennia on this planet to be awake and active during the day and to sleep at night. So our body expects the day to be bright and the night will be dark. But ever since the taming of fire and the invention of the light bulb in the beginning of the 20th century, we started claiming the night for our activities. We tried to turn the night into day. Our eyes are part of our brain. The human side of this phenomenon is that we experience light through our eyes that are essentially the extension of our brain. Something that biologists only recently discovered is that there are non-optic ganglion receptors in our eye. We see those receptors in orange color, consisting the surface of the retina here. So what are these non-optic cells doing in an optic organ like the eye? Well, they are doing something very important. These non-optic ganglion cells are very sensitive to blue light. Blue light is part of the full color spectrum of natural daylight that we know and expect. And once we receive that blue light, these ganglion receptors become active and they send a signal back to the brain and say, well, it's daytime. Let's do our daytime activities. And so the exposure of our eye to daylight starts this whole circadian response of hormones and neurotransmitters production, like melatonin, a hormone that acts as an antioxidant and protects the body from harmful radiation, serotonin, or the hormone of pleasure, dopamine, cortisol, and etc., etc. So it becomes apparent that the succession of day and night plays a vital role in this entrainment, as it affects our mood, our ability to focus, our motivation, learning ability, our memory, our blood pressure, body temperature, as well as it reinforces our immune system. Circadian cycles are more comprehensive than we thought. And so this is wonderful and complex mechanism that is triggered by natural daylight is set in motion, producing hormones and neurotransmitters depending on the time of day and the quality of light. In this diagram we can see in a period of 24 hours from the highest levels of testosterone at 9 in the morning and all the way through into the commencement of melatonin secretion at 9 at night, how important it is this succession of light and darkness that allows our bodies to operate smoothly. Researchers have found that light is the most potent signal for this entrainment and our bodies keeping track of our biological clock, making it apparent that sufficient daily exposure to natural daylight is of great importance. But what is really happening to our lives today? This is a graph showing daily exposure to daylight, and this is us compared to our ancestors in terms of how much brightness we are exposed to. So the dark line is the primitive man who used to experience absolute darkness during nighttime and had this high level of brightness during daytime, while the red line is us. We get up and get in our car in the morning, we expose ourselves very little to daylight, and then we get back inside into our office, where we sit under fluorescent tubes most of the time, which have only a fraction of the full color spectrum of full color spectrum of light that we expect as humans. And then we might go out for lunch and then come back into our fluorescent tubes again, and then there is another small bump there where we get back into our cars to go back home. So our eyes are seeing less bright days and less dark nights as we progressed in only a few years since this change happened. And this is bound to have an impact. And here is the impact that we have noticed, and it's the fact that we seek daylight both in our natural environment as well as our built environment. we crave for daylight because it is something that is missing from our everyday lives. We always prefer natural daylight to any other type of light, and we are more attracted to well-daylit buildings, as for example that of a library. The first thing we do after choosing our book is to look around in search of a window to sit by and read. And this is something that happens not only in a library, but also in an airport or in a restaurant. We unconsciously, and at all levels of consciousness, we do crave daylight. Here we can see some of the great benefits of natural daylight. Well-daylit environments increase occupant productivity and comfort, improve occupant health, and lead to substantial energy savings of up to 80% or even more. At this point, we should note the unique property of natural daylight to fully render the color spectrum. We can see different light sources as well as their respective color temperatures. And on the right, we have the different spectral wavelengths of various light sources. Natural daylight ensures the most accurate color rendition, which is especially important in stores and supermarkets where the visual quality of the products plays a key role in their sales. Attention. Be careful. This does not only concern the industries of paint, varnishes, furniture or publishers, but could save anyone from something like this. Or sometimes you may choose an outfit at the store because you really liked its color, only to return home and find out that there must have been a mistake. This outfit has a different color to what I wanted. So, if daylight is this amazing phenomenon that we enjoy so little compared to our ancestors, why don't we construct buildings that are flooded by natural daylight, buildings that are a pleasure to use? Well, the main reason is that it is very difficult to design buildings with sufficient and good daylight penetration. The architects in our audience have surely experienced that. Excuse me. The sun, to begin with, is a constantly moving light source. Weather conditions and cloud cover patterns change seasonally, which makes them the most unpredictable factors by nature. Orientation is a very important factor, but also one that we rarely have control over. Openings bring light of completely different qualities, depending on the direction they point to. Glare is another issue. By trying to bring more light in, we often have undesirable results, as glare just goes hand in hand with direct sunlight. And last but not least, the occupants of a building will adjust the blinds of the windows to achieve personal comfort, which makes them a factor as unpredictable as the weather. So, in order to design a naturally well-lit building, we need to take into consideration, first of all, the use of the building, but also all the above. And this diversity of factors cries for a well-informed design and planning ahead. When architects are called to satisfy a brief, they will design the way most architects were trained to design, which is for the worst-case scenario. So what happens is we end up designing the worst case. This is a building similar to so many other office buildings around the globe, a glass box that does not necessarily have a very bright interior. In reality, it is dark and has a terrible visual quality, its interior. The light has a tint of blue that the occupants hate, and in order to counterbalance this effect, they keep the lights on all day, even if the sun is shining outside. And when the sun hits the facade, as there are no overhangs as we can see, and the sun will still shine through the tint, the glare forces people to close the curtains, which they then usually leave that way closed as well. They leave them closed, as they don't like this bluish light that comes through the windows anyway. So we have this terrible waste of materials and energy in a building that in effect achieves the exact opposite of what it was built for. It makes us wonder, what happened when this building was being planned? What line of thought led to this? Most probably, the brief called for large windows, many windows with unobstructed view of the surrounding garden. So the architect responded with this tinted glass box covered with this film, the solar film, which is supposed to reduce heat gain by no more than 10%, let's say. Also, it should protect from glare, but who is responsible for the visual quality of the interior of this space? Who is supposed to ensure that optical comfort of the interior of a building is achieved when a project is delivered? Well, anyone would say it should be the architect. Only the architect has no way of quantifying natural daylight, and so he doesn't have a soundly based argument to support his design ideas. If there is no metric for what we care for, then we don't get a chance to present it at the table of negotiations. So, we need good solid metrics in order to be able to calculate the quantity and quality of natural daylight that will allow us to maximize the benefits of it and minimize energy consumption in our buildings. But we'll also have a small error margin, or most importantly, small variance from the actual result. These metrics, they must describe good, better, and best natural daylight planning so that we can compare different approaches. How much natural daylight is needed for optical comfort, and what provides with the highest productivity benefits? What is necessary for a healthy circadian rhythm? We want metrics that are sensitive indicators of good daylighting that allows designs to be optimized for the most energy efficient means to deliver comfort. With a starting point of no less than a dozen already in use but way out of date daylighting tools, including the infamous daylight factor, and after studies that were conducted for 2.5 years in 61 buildings, they came up with a new metrics. The study comprised of a questionnaire regarding comfort levels experienced in by occupants in each space, was handed out to 5 lighting specialists and 10 users. The results were carefully compared with the results obtained by lighting simulation programs, the latest programs, I should say, and 2 calculation systems stood out as getting the closest to actual occupant evaluation. Since the reason driving all this is occupant comfort, after all, yes? The tools chosen were spatial daylight autonomy and annual sunlight exposure. In 2012, the IESNA, or the Illuminating Engineering Society of North America, officially adopted these 2 systems, with LEED following closely after. So these are the 2 indicators that came about to ensure the adequacy and quality of natural daylighting of the interior of a building. Spatial daylight autonomy, with these little numbers next to it that mean a lot actually, measures daylight illuminance efficiency for a given area. More specifically, it states the percentage of floor area that exceeds an illuminance level of 300 lux or is equal to 300 lux for 50% of the hours of use of the specific space. the preferred values are equal or higher than 75% of the analysis area, while when they lie between 55 and 75%, they are considered nominally acceptable. Now, with annual sunlight exposure, it evaluates the potential source of visual discomfort from direct sunlight, otherwise glare, and it is defined as the percentage of an analysis area that exceeds the direct sunlight illuminance level of 1000 lux for more than 250 hours per year. The preferred value in this case must be less than 3% of the analysis area, while the nominally acceptable values should not exceed the 7% of the analysis area. So now we have a new, much more accurate metric system for calculating natural daylight penetration, since it is sensitive to important factors such as climate and sun angle, orientation, facade design, space geometry, furniture layout, as well as blinds, which are not just decorative features as we've seen and experienced. As a result, the new metrics reward spaces with less sun penetration, for example, spaces with well-designed overhangs or with north orientation. It rewards spaces with deep daylight penetration. Here we can see the difference between sun penetration and daylight penetration. The first is referring to direct sun penetration, and the second is referring to daylight penetration in general and not direct sunlight. So spaces with deep daylight penetration are spaces with higher windows, for example, or that are using light redirecting technologies. And it also rewards spaces with multi-directional daylight, like with windows on more than one wall, or windows or spaces that have windows and skylights. A piece of important information that came up through this study was that we have the best natural daylight penetration from roof level, meaning that if we have openings in the roof of the building, that's where the most daylight will come from. On the other hand, the new metrics penalize spaces with no blinds and shades and no overhangs, which is spaces that admit too much direct sunlight. They penalize deep spaces, like spaces with large floor plans, where a large portion of the occupied space is away from a daylight source. And they penalize spaces with low daylight levels, for example, spaces with dark or small windows. Therefore, we see it is essential to plan things ahead. We need to gather everyone with the proper knowledge and experience at the table early. But let's have a look at some methods that can help us design well-lit environments more easily and more effectively. Some of this should be implemented early in the process of designing a building, while others can be applied even in existing buildings. Here we can see these methods. We have vertical openings, of course, windows, have light shelves, atria, fiber optic lighting systems, and roof openings. We can see them in more detail here. Few people know, here we have the windows, vertical openings. We use them many years, since the beginning of time, for illuminating our spaces, since the beginning of the first buildings built. But few people know how to properly utilize the vertical openings on the sides of a building. One of the major factors to consider here is the orientation of the building, and small openings and few in number are recommended on the east and west sides of the building so that we can avoid overheating in summer. And same thing goes for the north side, where preventing heat loss during winter is also very important. The south side is the favored side. The ideal case is to cover it with 60% with windows in order to ensure heat gain during winter, because we have deeper light penetration due to the low angle of the sun. And here we have the basic principles of bioclimatic design, which sort of a bit clashes with our goal to bring indirect daylight, indirect sunlight more. So if we have large openings, these windows should be equipped with horizontal blinds or horizontal elements which will protect the building from overheating during the summer. And with proper planning, they could also serve as architectural light shelves. Light shelves are horizontal elements with a very reflective surface, and which sends daylight deep into our space. Light shelves are placed best to place them above eye level, optimally at 2 meters height, and they need to have a high reflectance upper surface, which will reflect daylight onto the ceiling and deeper into the space. The reflectance of the ceiling, therefore, is also important. This technique is generally used on the equator-facing side of the building, which means in the north hemisphere we will place them on the south side, and in the southern hemisphere we should place the light shelves in the northern side, because this is where maximum sunlight comes from, and as a result these techniques will be most effective. And during summer they help us prevent overheating. Not only do light shelves allow light to penetrate through the building, they are also designed to shade near the windows, where they do not allow glare to happen. Here we have atria, which is a large open space. Basically, an atrium is a large open space located in the center of the building. It constitutes a common building feature from antiquity, where it formed a central, an interior courtyard around which the daytime activities would happen. Nowadays, modern atrias developed in the 19th and 20th centuries are often several stories high and have a glazed roof and or large windows. Atria are a popular design feature because they give their buildings a feeling of space and light. Users like atria because they create a dynamic and stimulating interior that provides shelter from the external environment while maintaining a visual link with that environment. It also reduces dramatically the depth of the building, so we have smaller distances from natural daylight sources. Let's see, we have fiber optics lighting systems as well, the latest technological achievement in natural daylight. Their use for lighting is rapidly growing in recent years, since they're very easy to install, easy to maintain, and very secure in the fullest sense of the word, and suitable for a huge range of lighting applications. Here we can see examples of roof openings. Such openings are skylights and tubular daylight devices. They have the best natural daylight performance since, as well mentioned before, the skyvault is the best source of natural daylight. They do not allow sun glare due to the fact that the direct sunlight falls through only when the sun is at its highest. And depending on the material used, we have different effects of penetration and diffusion. Let's have a closer look at these. Skylights. Skylights are very widely used, mainly in the case of industrial type buildings. Excuse me. They are pretty popular as a solution due to the good amount of natural daylight they allow through, but also due to their relatively low cost of supply and installation. Unfortunately, it is not a durable solution as their material weathers and degrades with time, resulting in the reduction of performance and light transmittance, as well as causing leakages in certain cases. They also provide no protection from UV radiation. Let us now take a closer look at a more sophisticated solution like the tubular daylighting device. It is a comprehensive system that uses no electricity at all and simply takes advantage of natural daylight's basic characteristics like reflectance and diffusion. It consists of a clear polycarbonate dome, which is kept always clean due to the way it's formed, and allows the unobstructed entry of natural daylight, which is then directed down an aluminium tube internally covered with a highly reflective ceramic film, which has a 99.7% specular reflectance, to finally be uniformly diffused into the interior. They are usually installed in finished roofs of any roofing material. In the case of a concrete slab, it is best to create the openings during construction, but installation in a finished slab is also possible. They are a comprehensive system. It is a system, that is being applied around the world for over 25 years in the Eastern European region. In the Eastern European region, it is mainly installed in industrial type buildings, as well as department stores and supermarkets. It allows no heat transmittance, protects from UV radiation, performs superbly in both new build and existing building applications. But the most important thing is that they have a long lifespan with zero operational cost and maintenance. So allow me to introduce to you Ktisisol Group, a company which specializes in energy services and sustainable services for the past 17 years, with products entirely in the line of energy efficiency. Apart from tubular daylight devices, Ktisisol offers the solar window, an innovative high-performance skylight with excellent quality-cost relationship, solar star ventilation systems with photovoltaic panels, the latest fiber optic lighting systems, and state-of-the-art LED indoor and outdoor lighting. After years of experience in the field and in designing and installing natural daylighting and designing for companies that wish to achieve great performance for the buildings, in Greece, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania and Cyprus, Ktisisol decided that it had matured in the field of maintenance and waterproofing and expanded its activity to the full operational management of a business premises. Ctesisol, considering the conditions prevailing in the market at this time, has started during the last 2 years a new financing program for those who wish to dramatically reduce their operational costs. The Greek ministry has created 2 models of contracts from which Ctesisol selected the contract shared benefit agreement as the proposed model of cooperation. The phases of the project, according to one such contract, are, first of all, a preliminary study, where at this stage we record the existing lighting system and the structural characteristics of the building, and make a first assessment of the customer's needs. Detailed technical design, where we conduct a photometric study of the spaces, calculate energy savings, keeping in mind other factors as well, such as maintenance and productivity benefits. Then is the signing of the contract. Then we have installation of the equipment, which is financed fully by the Ctesisol group. Then this is followed by the corrective actions and the savings benefit calculations that are conducted. Repayment of investment begins by installments. The installments are percentage of the saving on the energy bill of the client that is achieved through this intervention. And by the end of when the investment is fully paid off, ownership of the equipment is fully taken by the client. We have come to the end of our presentation. We will now answer questions of the audience. Let me see. Yes, many people are asking here what's the lifespan of a tubular daylight device and what is the warranty it holds. Well, all daylight systems that we supplied by Ctesisol Group are covered by a 20-year warranty, provided that installation is done by us. We want to be sure that the job is done properly. Obviously, as you can imagine, we can guarantee for our products, if we install them ourselves, for 20 years. About its lifespan, though, it way exceeds the warranty. In our experience, we have seen that our systems continue performing without any loss in light transmittance or any damages at all, or any weathering for longer than 20 years. We have another question here about the fiber optic lighting system. How far does light can light be transmitted through this system? Well, fiber optics is a system that is used in telecommunications and in many other. It transfers data in the form of light. So basically, there is no limit. As much light as comes in through one end of the fiber optic of the optic fiber, the same amount of light will come through no matter how long this fiber is. Let me see other questions. I'm afraid we're running out of time, and I would like to here. I would like to thank you for taking part in our presentation, and if you have any more questions, you can always visit our website or send them to this email address shown at the bottom of this slide. I would like to wish everyone Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, especially to the whole of our SoloTube family and everyone else who has watched. Have a lovely afternoon. Goodbye.